Hi, everyone. All right, so today this is live. This is a live discussion about what's going on in the sky right now. I really wanted to talk about this because you have some really interesting things happening astrologically. So you have 3 or 4 planets right now in the sign of Pisces, and it's Sun, Saturn, Venus, and Neptune. And I'll be talking about mainly the Sun, Venus, Saturn conjunction in Neptune. And if you're new here, or conjunction in Neptune, conjunction in Pisces. So if you're new here, I want to explain something first. Okay. I'm an astrologer that uses the tropical zodiac, and I use Vedic techniques, or basically techniques that are in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, or basically Parashara for short, and Jaimini astrology, but I use the tropical zodiac. I also use some Western techniques. And when I say Western, it's basically Hellenic astrology, which is more or less based on Persian astrology, ancient Persian astrology called Tajika astrology. Okay. But for the most part, I use a lot of Vedic techniques. So I get asked about this. Is this, Vedic astrology? Is this Western astrology? Is this, the sidereal zodiac? I do not use sidereal zodiac. All right, I'll just say that right up front. I do not use that. I use tropical. And there are some times that I use what they call the constellational zodiac, but it's not the same as sidereal, because it's not based on equal 30-degree pizza slices of the sky. Okay. Because the constellations that we're familiar with, like, Virgo, Libra, all of that, those constellations are uneven. And there is an entire system of astrology that can be done in the constellational format. But I'm not doing that today. Okay. I'm using sun sign astrology, which is based on the relationship of the sun to the earth. So that's the tropical zodiac. Okay. So now we're going to talk about this conjunction, and I'm going to do it in the light of planetary states, because the reason that conjunctions are so important, they're more important than oppositions or squares or planetary aspects. And the reason that is because a conjunction, no matter of what planet it is, or planets are involved in the conjunction, indicates a new cycle, an ending of a cycle and a new cycle. Now, you get this in planetary returns as well. So when you have a Jupiter return, a Venus return, a Saturn return is the big one. That's the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle in regards to the indications of that planet. You also have that when you have a planet going through your first house or your ascendant. That's also a beginning of a new cycle, more specifically particular to you, and how you incorporate that planet into who you are at your very core, your core essence, and how you use that planet to kind of guide your path, because the first house is the path. All right. Now, when you have a planetary conjunction of 2 different planets, let's say Venus and the sun, and I mean, this is in the sky, more or less, and then also in the natal chart. So a transiting planet conjuncting one of your natal planets. So let's say you have, okay, I'm going to give an example because I'm having this right now at this very moment. This Saturn is exactly on my sun, on my natal sun. So it probably wasn't a good idea to do this video, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. It's about 6 minutes of degree away from my sun. It's at 11:49. My sun is at 11:43 Pisces. So this is an interesting, because it indicates an end of a cycle and a new cycle beginning in the context of those two planets, whatever planets they are. All right. And hello, Maria. And so they so you combine the indications of those planets. Okay. So in the sky right now, you have Venus, Saturn, Sun. Now in the Vedic system, and also in the or in the whole sign house system, if they are in the same sign, they are conjunct. It doesn't matter how far away they are. Okay. So within the sign. Oh yeah. Yep, exactly. So oh, and I wanted to mention too, if you think of something while I'm talking, you can ask me questions, because yeah, you can ask me questions. This is also going to be a Q&A. So I like to answer questions and talk about astrology in general. So go ahead and ask away if you think of something. So I'll say that now. But so when you have this is a lot going on. So you have the sun, which is the government. Now I'm going to talk about the mundane indications. When I say mundane, that means the worldly indications. I'm going to fix my camera here. Go up a little bit. Okay. So when you have a Sun-Saturn conjunction, that's obviously going to give a lot of disappointment or limitations to leadership, to the government. In your personal life, it can be problems with your boss. All right. And this is for everyone, not just Pisces. Okay. Because the Sun and Saturn are conjoining. The Sun will leave Pisces and go into Aries on the 20th, March 20th. So we only have about 4 days left. And so that's just kind of a general theme or indication going on in the mundane world, disappointments with the leaders, limitations of our leadership. And then on a personal level, it can be you're not accessing your creative ability. You feel like giving up. A Sun-Saturn conjunction can really make people feel like they want to give up. They don't want to shine. It's too much trouble. It's you can feel tired. It can sap your energy. All right. It can sap your inspirations. You can't access them. Okay. And then the way that's called starvation. When the Saturn conjoins any planet, that planet is starved. It doesn't matter what planet it is. All right. And it's a delaying factor. It takes that planet longer to manifest. Yeah. Yeah. Saturn going over a moon is it's intense, and there is a remedy for it. All right. Yeah, I can remember when I went over my moon, and just from my practice, it's a very intense time. It's sometimes you can really get down on yourself. Not always. Sometimes Saturn will cross your moon and you won't really notice it that much, but then Saturn will go retrograde back over your moon and then turn direct again. And those 2 times it's like, whoa. Okay. So when that happens, I'm just going to give that here because I'm answering questions. Thanks, Scorpio Queen. There is a remedy. It's called the Hanuman Chalisa. And this is what they do. And this is a Vedic astrology remedy. And it's basically mantras. Mantras are a huge remedy. for, personal, when there's difficult aspects of the planets going over your personal planets. And in Western astrology, you try to work through it in a kind of psychological way or a psychotherapy way. But what happens with the mantras is that it occupies your mind. For one thing, you try to get really into the mantra, and you try to let it consume you, or you become one with it. But also there's a whole theory behind it where, you're saying certain things in Sanskrit, and that's the original language, apparently. And that those sound vibrations create things in the ether, which are able to counteract the archontic forces of the planets. Okay. And especially Saturn. So, yeah, I'm going to do I'm going to interrupt here. I'm going to do a video on the coming eclipses on Monday with a colleague of mine. So, so that I'm going to really talk about the two upcoming eclipses. So it's going to be quite long. So I'll definitely talk about that. So check that out. And if you can't, I don't think it's not going to be live, but we're going to put it up on Monday or Tuesday. It's for this penumbral eclipse happening in March 24th, I think it's, and then the other one is April 8th. So you have a lunar eclipse and then a solar eclipse. But anyway, so what I was going to say, to counteract the effects of Saturn, you can do the Hanuman Chalisa, and you will actually, and this is Saturn going over the moon, but you can actually do it for Saturn hitting any planets. I haven't done it for my sun, Saturn going over my sun, because it really hasn't been that bad, except for some minor illness issues. But yeah, that's the theory behind it. You can do the Hanuman Chalisa. It's on YouTube. It's on, it's all over the internet. You can say it. You only have to say it once, and usually you feel better right away. Okay. Hanuman is the monkey god that defeated Saturn. Okay. So that's kind of what it's based on. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So that's what that's why conjunctions are so important, more important than oppositions or squares or other planetary aspects, is because they begin a new cycle. They end a cycle. You're supposed to integrate everything you've learned in that cycle. And I'm talking about planets to your natal positions, or transits to your natal positions. And then you begin a new cycle based on all of the wisdom and knowledge you've gained from that past cycle. Okay. And it has to be in relation to the planets involved. Now, up in the sky, you have the sun, Saturn up there. There's a failure of the government, failure of leadership. This can be in your country. This can be with your local government. This can be with your boss at work. The sun represents your boss too. All right. Then you can, feel a draining of your inspiration. It can affect your immune system. The sun rules the immune system. You can have problems with bones, teeth, joints, because the sun rules the foundation of the body in Vedic astrology, which is the skeleton and teeth. Okay. And just a tendency to give up. Now, in a natal chart, when you have a Sun-Saturn conjunction, that's also called starvation. In a natal chart, the native, when they have a Sun-Saturn conjunction, they get used to just getting by in life. Okay, just doing the bare minimum to get by. They don't really they aren't concerned. Now, this is before they heal the Savasta. There are some people who have healed the Savasta. And when I say Avasta, that means state. It's a planetary state. Okay. Now you have planetary states in Western astrology too. when planets form certain configurations, they give certain effects. That's all it means. So in Western astrology, you have the yod, you have the T-square, and they give a certain result. This is kind of the same thing. But and then another thing, cazimi, when a planet is cazimi, when it's within 1 degree of the sun, that's considered to be a planetary state. It gives a certain effect. But and that's all I mean when I say I should say the English, the planetary state, okay? But when you have the Sun Saturn conjunction in a chart, the person wasn't supported, or in their early life through following their inspirations, and they didn't have examples of people in their early life following their inspirations or shining, wanting to shine, or being validated by shining their individual inspiration and who they were at their core essence. Thank you. So that's what happens. That's before the person, usually before the age of 35. After age 35, Saturn matures, and the person is able to handle Saturn better. Okay. Now, but they have a problem around giving up, and not following it through on an inspiration. They just don't see that making a big difference in their lives. They get used to a life of just doing what's necessary to survive. Saturn is the planet of survival. Saturn wants to survive at all costs. Okay. And Saturn rules our ability to withstand suffering. And that is when Saturn is influencing planets, and especially the sun, the person gets into the habit of just getting by, trying to surviving at all costs. But so usually in the early life, like I was saying, they didn't have that support there to support their inner inspirations. So having this happen in the sky this past month of the Pisces month, that is kind of a general theme of what's happening in the world. All right. Now, and usually it's the father, because the son, or as the caregiver or the parent, that didn't follow through with their inspirations and didn't support the child and their inspirations. So the sun rules the father. Now that's going to be over, thankfully, when Saturn goes into Aries. But the thing is, the sun is actually pretty powerful in the sign of Pisces. The sun is powerful in all water signs because it's in signs of friends. All right. Jupiter, which rules Pisces, is a friend to the sun. And then the moon is a friend to sun, the sign of Cancer, and Mars is a friend to sun, the sign of Scorpio. So the sun has some power in water signs. Now, when the sun goes into Aries, it's really going to have a lot of power. That's its exalted position. Oh, great. I'm glad you like it. And then let's see. Okay, so then we have Venus. Now, this is a more difficult one because Venus is in Pisces right now. Right now, it's at like 5:55. Okay, 5 degrees, 55 minutes. And Pisces is the exalted position of Venus. Venus gets strong in Pisces, the strongest it can be, okay? So it's got a lot of power. However, it's surrounded by malefics. And so you have, all right, I'm going to talk about the Sun-Venus conjunction. Now, this goes both ways because the Sun and Venus are enemies to each other. They're completely different in their motivations and what they want to accomplish. the sun is debilitated in the sign of Libra, Venus's big sign, or its Mula Tricona sign, the sign where it gets its power. And Venus does not do well in Leo. All right. But the conjunction of the sun and Venus, well, what does this mean? So Venus gets starved or agitated and starved, but agitated by the sun. And what happens is, now people have this in it's 1 out of 3 charts. So it's a third of charts. It's common. The sun, Mercury, and Venus travel in clusters. So this is a common thing. And it's a common thing because it's around societal expectations. Venus is society and our social graces, and conforming to society and getting approval from society, and having the social grace to maneuver through all of the difficult situations we can have with other people. Venus rules manners and decorum and those types of things. Okay. So when you get Venus with the sun, the sun will always win. The sun will always overcome what Venus wants. And then so Venus gets starved. And because the sun this is me, this is what I'm going to do, I'm the king. But Venus starves the sun because there may be disapproval from society in general. But the sun's going to do it anyway. And the sun may hold back, but he's still going to do it, but in a way that isn't beneficial for the person and society in general, both of the people at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to drink some. I don't want to get hoarse because I got hoarse last time. This isn't going to be as long as the last one, thank God. All right, so when you have a Sun-Venus conjunction in the chart, the person will sacrifice their relationships for what they want to do. Okay, to follow their vision, to follow their creative inspiration. And if they follow that, if they follow what their inner inspiration dictates to them in whatever way, even if it is subdued by Saturn, because Saturn will subdue that light of the sun, they will still do what they want, and they can only follow their inspiration themselves alone, and they don't involve somebody else. They're not going to compromise for somebody else. Okay. Okay, yeah. And then okay, so now how does the sun influence Venus? Yeah, I was going to talk about Cazimi. That's important. You're still going to have the agitation. However, it actually is better. You have a purified Venus. You have a purified love energy, I guess you could say. You come to understand the most purest form of Venus when it's Cazimi. And Cazimi means it's within 1 degree. Okay. And because the sun is the great purifier. And Cazimi is a different story. There is still some agitation to Venus. And that what this means is, okay, so when Venus is conjoined the sun, or when Venus is in Leo, but it's less so, all right, when it's in Leo. But this is really interesting to see, is that you will do things, you'll express a lot of creativity and charisma and passion to get attention, to get validation from others. You're very charismatic, very creative. and you'll do all these things to get attention and validation and admiration, even fans. Okay. But you'll get this love and you'll get this admiration, but it's based on what you're doing. All right. What you're receiving from other people, all the admiration, even love or friendship, whatever it is, it's based on what you're doing. And Venus is not a planet of doing. It's a planet of receiving, relaxing, taking time to allow yourself to be accepted and appreciated for who you are on the inside, not by what you're doing, not by being this very charismatic persona, but by just being who you are. Venus is a feminine planet and wants to be appreciated for who it is, who you are. So, thanks. Yeah, it will come through. Okay, so whatever house this conjunction is happening in, the Venus-Sun conjunction, it'll express itself come through whatever the meanings of those houses are, and through the person, if that house represents a person. But it'll especially be very pronounced, or you can really see it in the person's personality, where they are, really charismatic and they're kind of putting on a show a little bit, you know what I mean? Those types of people, but they, if it's in a air house or 3rd, 7th, and 11th house, okay? Because those are the houses of connecting with other people, with relationships. And, the 3rd house is our associates. The 7th house is the public and our partner. The 11th house is our peers and colleagues, and receiving respect and recognition in general. So you can interpret like that, whatever house it's in, it'll come through the agency of that house. So, well, Aries Sun. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Where is your Saturn? 3rd eye activated. Yeah. Hi. And your Mars. Okay. So then, so the Venus gets starved because it's been doing all of these things to bring love in, to bring admiration in and respect. But then when it stops doing, the other people expect the person to keep being on, so to speak. And they're not always like that, that's why Venus gets starved. Another way Venus gets starved, with this Sun Venus conjunction, which is happening right now in the sky. Okay. And yeah, I'm going to get to, I talked about the Sun Saturn conjunction already. But so then I lost my train of thought. Okay. I'm going to concentrate on this for a second. So the person is always doing and doesn't really have time to relax and enjoy their partner. Now, the other thing that happens is that so when you have a Sun Venus conjunction, the person has a kingdom, right? The Sun is our kingdom. This is how I want to live life. This is what I'm going to allow into my life. All right. This is me. This is my expression. Those people over there, I'm not interested in that. This is me and what I want. And this is who I'm going to allow into my life. All right. And then so they may be really interested in somebody. They may meet somebody that really activates them. They, inspires them. But that person is doing their own thing and they don't consider that part of their kingdom, they will allow people into their kingdom who they think they can. There is a bit of control involved. Okay. However, the other person has their own kingdom too. They have their own individuality and desires and all of those things. So when the other person begins to want to do their own thing that's outside of what the Sun Venus conjunction person believes to be part of their kingdom, there can be friction there. And then the Sun person can even get a little insecure, because when you have a Sun Venus conjunction, that person really wants to be the center of attention. They want really to be the center of their lover's attention. And when their partner takes that away or does something else for whatever reason, it can cause some problems. So yeah. Oh yeah, hi. Thanks for that. Thanks for the advertising. And then oh, and then another thing too is that, okay, so the sun rules what's high. All right. Now, the sun gets what they call directional strength at noon, or when it's high in the sky, it gets power there. All right. It's almost like the sun being in Aries, where it's exalted. You know, it's powerful in the 10th house. That's where it is at noon, or, you know, around that time. Okay. It varies depending on where you are in the world. So, and then in Gemini astrology, Gemini says that when you marry, when one of your indications of the partner is the sun, you marry someone who is higher than you, meaning higher station. And that's whatever you consider to be higher, like somebody more intelligent, someone wealthier, they come from a better family, you know, whatever it is. All right. Because the sun rules the ultimate. All right. It's the king. It's just there. It shines and gives life and all of those good things. So when a Sun Venus person usually goes for people higher than their station, or what they consider to be higher. When Venus is with Saturn, though, they also go to people who they consider to be lower than their station, whatever that is. So, so then you have, yeah, I don't know. Everyone that used to do birth time rectifications has stopped, as far as I know, because it's such a pain. If you want to torture yourself, it really is. I know, you know, you have to get astrologers that are up and coming, because I guess some people enjoy it. It's like figuring out a puzzle to do a birth time rectification. But it really is a lot of work, you know. But all the ones that I used to know, I don't think do it anymore. There was Karen White. You can ask her, Karen White, and then there's I don't know if Ryan does it anymore. I doubt he does. Ryan Kurzak, and then there's Channing Ayers. I don't think she does it anymore, but she might. So, so yeah, thanks. And then, okay, so where was I? Oh yeah. All right, Venus, Saturn. Now, so anyway, like on a mundane level, this is, worldly. When I say mundane, I mean in the world, we have the Sun, Saturn, Venus conjunction going on in the sky. And that Venus is starved, Venus is agitated. That means diplomacy is failing. All right. And that is pretty obvious by what's happening. Usually Venus with Jupiter is in a man's chart is pretty good for relationships, and a woman's chart too. But Venus with Jupiter is I don't want to get into that because it's a little well, yeah. Okay. So it really depends. The sun is really powerful in Aries. And so when you have a Sun Saturn conjunction, there's a habit you get into. All right. There's a habit. However, these people can become very humble and become very consistent if they heal their planetary state. Some people will do it without even realizing it. Now, I'm going to give 2 examples of people who did this that have a Sun Saturn conjunction. One of them was in Cancer, which is, of course, friendly to the sun, and one of them was in Leo, which is the sun's own sign. So yeah, and that was the one in Cancer is Sylvester Stallone, and the one in Leo is Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yeah, I mean, you have very successful people that have Sun Saturn conjunctions. And so what happens with this is the person, because the sun is the career too. It's a planet of career. Both of them are. The sun and Saturn are planets of career. What we have to do in the world, the sun is the power and influence that we want to exert in the world. Saturn is the planet of, all right, this is frivolous, this is redundant, this is causing problems. I'm going to clear all this crap out of the way and go after what is important to me. All right. And that's it. So when they get together, if the person is able to heal and not give up, and keep going and finding what it is that's important to them and following their inspiration and not getting distracted, which is Saturn forgoes all the distractions. Okay. Then they're able to succeed in a big way. It's also a very humbling conjunction. The person has the ability to be humble. They can heal that pain or that wound and understand that humility goes a long way. They can understand that accepting certain limitations can propel them in what they, the goals they set for themselves. Now, with the case with both of these guys, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, they're both guys who are supposedly, hyper masculine, obviously. That's what they were playing. And see, when you have Saturn with a planet, sometimes there's overcompensation. So it can, have the person overcompensating and whatever that planet represents. And the sun is the pure yang energy. All right. It's pure, or the masculine energy, for pretty much. That's it. That's what it rules. So both of these guys went to the extreme with their hypermasculinity. Now, it doesn't do that all the time. Sometimes it can do the opposite. It really depends on some other things going on in the chart. But there is, because they feel a separation. Saturn separates us from things. So they feel a separation from the masculine force, so they overcompensate for it. Okay, but absolutely, you can definitely be successful and follow your inspiration once you understand and get out of the habit of trying to build your kingdom on what is not there. That's another Saturn Sun conjunction. Like when you have a Saturn Sun conjunction, it's like, okay, this is here in front of me. This is what matters, not some fantasy or, what isn't in my life. And so, and yeah, so, Sylvester Stallone, he wrote that movie Rocky. He basically wrote the script. And he did not, he got offers from all these studios to produce the film, but he wanted to play the lead. That was his condition. And he was nobody, nobody had heard of him. And they offered him all of this money several times. He turned it down every time because he said, nope, I am not selling this script unless I play the lead. And he did it. He stuck to it. Saturn basically was like, focused him on this one thing, and he was not going to give up until he got what he wanted. So once you heal that planetary state, you can do great things. You use the positive, beneficial energies of both planets, even though they are enemies. You reconcile that within yourself. You reconcile that battle going on within yourself. And so, yeah, now I'm going to go back to Venus Saturn. So Venus is our self-worth. Now, Venus is such an important planet. I can't even, say how important Venus is. Venus and the moon, they're both feminine planets, but they're so important because Venus is how worthy we feel, and using, having a strong sense of self-worth to understand what we deserve, basically. Now, when you have Venus with Saturn, the person isn't really in touch with what their values are and what is important to them, or, what is valuable to them, basically. They don't really understand what is valuable to them until they get after age 35. And then it's still slow going. Because, Saturn matures at age 35, and Saturn is a delaying factor. And separates us from things. So, and also it can show that in the early life, the person, they were in a family that valued things that the person did not value or had no interest in and didn't find valuable. And what the person found valuable as a child and an adolescent was not supported by their family either. In early life, that's where these states, these planetary states, stem from the early life and, past lives, if you believe in that. Also from, there's another way of looking at past lives through ancestors and ancestral DNA, ancestral memories. So there's this thing going on with Venus Saturn people. I have a Venus Saturn conjunction, so I know a lot about this. All right. And they just don't understand what's valuable to them. It takes them a long time to go through situations and go through events in their lives to understand what's important to them, and to come from a place of, I'm worthy for this. And they usually, a lot of them, will be resigned to being happy with very little. They can be ascetics. They can want to go into seclusion. They don't really care about possessions or making money or, anything like that. Having luxuries, being surrounded by luxurious or having luxurious surroundings. Um, uh, well, Venus in Taurus is pretty good. I mean, maybe a little bit, but nothing like I was saying. Yeah, Saturn, Mars, Moon. The Moon is a feminine planet. The Moon operates a lot like Venus. The Moon is so important too because it's our mind. And when it's with planets, those planets tend to become very highly emphasized in the personality. And the Moon, of course, is getting our needs met. But I don't want to talk about the Moon because it's not in this conjunction. It's not in the conjunction in the sky right now. So I don't want to get off on a tangent until after I'm finished. Then maybe if you guys still have questions about other things, I can address those. But I was just wanting to kind of go over this Venus Saturn thing because it's happening right now. But on a mundane level, of course, Venus rules diplomacy and diplomats. So there's a failure of that, especially with governments and especially between governments. The sun is the government. So you have all this going on right now. It should let up a little bit when the sun moves into Aries in 4 days. So, but in Venus's value, Venus is like, understanding what's important. And, oh, you will, don't worry. The eclipses. Yeah, it's totally heal about. Okay, what I want to emphasize here, planetary states, they call them in Vedic astrology, they're called Lajatati Avastas. Avasta just means state, okay? And there's different states. There's the starved state, thirsty state, shamed state. That's the one that's the most difficult. You can heal all of them. It's habits. That's all it is. Planetary states are habits that we grow into because we started to think that way in childhood. And it was because of our upbringing. And some of it probably is, past life driven too. But you can change these habits. And when you change the habits, you express the beneficial parts of those planets. You express the good qualities. And what the thing with Venus and Saturn is, okay, so a Venus-Saturn conjunction, the person is able to recognize that there are limitations to relationships, which is a great thing to recognize. Yes, Saturn also delights Venus. Okay, they're friends. Saturn and Venus are friends. But when there's a Venus-Saturn conjunction, that is that's a starvation too. All right. The person is able to recognize, okay, relationships, there's a limit to this, there's a limit to human love. And they understand that. They understand there's going to be some things they don't like about the person they're with, or, the opportunities or what the world has to offer them. They understand that. But they still seem to get into situations where there's an incompatibility. There's a, they're getting drained energetically. They're associating with people that they consider to be below their station. Not that that is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's just that's what it does sometimes. Okay. And in the sun, it's the opposite. They're trying to, go to somebody above their station. Or if they have both of those planets with Venus, they do both. Okay. But in the Venus-Saturn conjunction, it takes them a while. What happens is their fulfillment, because Venus is fulfillment, in something, the natural satisfaction we get from something good in the world. Venus rules food, eating good food, getting luxuries, getting comfort in our lives, being able to enjoy things in our lives, and relax. Venus is very much around relaxation, rejuvenation. There is a certain amount of lack in that until the age 35, or unless they heal that avasta or heal that state through, certain types of means, whether it's through spiritual means or psychological means. Well, Venus and Leo, I did talk, that's going to be kind of what the agitation of Venus I talked about in the beginning of in the beginning of this video. I don't know if you're here and you watched it, but yeah, I talked a lot about Venus Sun. In Vedic that would not be conjunct, but in Western it would. When you have Venus less than 10 degrees, or probably, yeah. Or no, that wouldn't even be that either. If you use the traditional orbs that come from Tajika astrology or Persian astrology. And then also Venus, Saturn, you can go through there can be humiliating experiences early in life. Just right off the bat, I'll tell you that when you have Venus, Saturn, there can be some of that. There can be just going for people or falling in love with people or being attracted to people that aren't really right for you. Okay. They're just not right. But Venus is Saturn is what we are not. All right. It rules what we shouldn't even be paying attention to. Okay. Saturn rules garbage, and it rules the colon in the body. It rules shit. All right. When you don't even think about when you well, I have Venus, Saturn, Rahu too. I just don't have the Mars, right? So I totally can relate. So when you can be attracted to things that are not good for you, that aren't going to support you, that don't really benefit who you are. And then the Venus Saturn person learns this as they grow older. They start learning because of these experiences they're having. Why isn't it working out? Or, whatever it is. And it's because the person really isn't that right. And that's how they learn. That's how they learn about who they are based on what they value. Okay. I'm going to do a forecast video on Monday. So for every sign, we're going to do that. I'm going to do that in collaboration with she's a tarot. She does astrology too, but her main thing is tarot. But we're going to talk about the eclipses and go through every sign. So I'll be doing that on Monday. So the person learns through these experiences that, they start to learn what they value, and they start to learn how they want to be fulfilled in the world. That's going to change quite a bit. And as they get older, they start to see that, I can have things. I have to concentrate on what's really important as far as what I need to fulfill myself. I can't have everything. but I can have what's important to me if I work for it, and if I understand what is not important to me and what doesn't belong. So, let me fix my camera a little bit. All right. So that's all kind of happening right now in the sign of Pisces, until the sun will move out on the 20th, and then Mars moves in. Then you're going to have Venus, Saturn, Mars conjunction after the 22nd. That's interesting. I'm going to do a video on that too, because that kind of changes the dynamic quite a bit. Saturn Mars is an interesting one as well. That's an interesting planetary state. But anyway, so I want to move on to the conjunction of the Sun and Neptune. That's happening right now. And soon it will be cazimi. Okay, it will be cazimi just means when a planet is within 1 degree of the Sun. That planet is purified, and you can see the ultimate of that planet. It makes a difference in far as where you experience this Saturn Venus, how you experience it, where you experience is the planet. The houses are like areas of life, the agency it comes through. But some people, like I said, that you heal that avasha, you learn to deal with that planetary state. You learn how to navigate the world through your experiences. The thing is, when you have planets with Saturn, okay, it's not something to be afraid of, all right? The reason I did this video is because it's good to hear, it's good to have things validated. If you're having experiences that aren't benefiting you, that hurt you, it's good to have validation being, okay, these are things I need to work in my chart. This is something that is causing me pain, and I want to understand why, and I want to heal it. It's totally possible to heal it. It's absolutely a no-brainer to heal it, to try to change that habit, because that's all it is. It's a habit. That's it. It's not set in stone. And some people do it without even knowing. They just they don't even know astrology. They go through self-help. Now, you said this is in the 6th house. The 6th house is the house of self-improvement. The 6th house is such an important house. I wanted to do a video on the 6th house because this is where it gets down to the nitty-gritty. Right? Everybody thinks, oh, it's the 8th house or the 12th house. It's spirituality and doing mantras and all of this stuff. It's not. It's the 6th house. The 6th house I like to call the house of the world. It's where we face the world. The world is a competition. It's a place where there's problems we have to solve. There's people that don't like us. We have to work. We have to go through tedious, boring work. We have to face adversities. That's how we become better people. That's how we improve. All right. And that is much better than people who have everything come to them, because those people are either really boring or they just, they are not learning about themselves and learning what it means to be human. Okay. But yeah, the 6th house is a really important house. It's actually a house of intelligence, believe it or not. because in Gemini astrology, Gemini has a yoga for ascertaining intelligence, how intelligent a person is. And it's got 3 things involved: the 3rd house, the 5th house, the 6th house. Okay. And I think the 9th house may be involved in some of it too. I can't remember, but it's like a combination. It's got karakas and, padas and all that. You don't want to even know about that. But but why I got off on that is I was talking about the 6th house. The 6th house is a house of intelligence because it's where we solve problems. And by solving problems, we become more intelligent. By battling people that are against us, we become more crafty, I guess you could say, cunning, which is something needed in this world, something needed to navigate worldly experiences. So, yeah, the 6th house is a house of doing the work you need to do. It's a very spiritual house, I think. It's actually the polarity of the 12th house. You've got the 12th and the 6th opposite each other, right? Like Pisces and Virgo. And that's a seesaw. You go back and forth between work and taking yourself out of society. Whatever, meditation, reaching different states of consciousness, asceticism. Then you work, you go back and work. You have to balance the 2 out. And it's connected. They're the same thing. That's the thing with polarities, is they're the same thing. It's just like a negative of each other. They have the same motivation. And Virgo, the 6th sign, is a very spiritual sign. It's the sign of the young girl or the child, like the prepubescent girl. It's a child. It's a person full of wonder and innocence and just seeing the beauty in life, seeing the divination in nature, or the divine in nature. Sorry. And so it's a very spiritual sign. Not many people consider Virgo to be that way, but it is. Okay. We always think Pisces, Scorpio, but it really is. Virgo is very important. The 6th house. If you don't do the 6th house, you end up homeless. Sorry. You're not going to do well in life unless you face that 6th house. All right. So yeah, I got off on a tangent again, but I'm going to talk about Neptune and the Sun and Neptune. And then you can ask me some more questions until I get hoarse. No, it doesn't. The conjunctions, okay, so does Sun conjunct Venus in D60 chart give the same effects you spoke on earlier? No, the planetary states are all in the Rashi chart. When you qualify that by so some areas of life, you're going to have a better Venus. Okay, let's say you have a Venus Saturn conjunction in your Rashi chart, and then in your D9 Venus is in Libra. That means in your married life, your Venus is working very well. Okay, you make better decisions. You qualify it with the Vargas. Not everybody who has a Venus Saturn conjunction is going to act in the same way in the same areas of life. That's why it's qualified in the Varga charts or the divisional charts, harmonic charts. Okay. It doesn't give, the planetary states are absolutely only in the birth chart. Okay. No, yeah, the 6th is great. It's a very interesting house. It'll show you the gumption this person has, the fight in them Do they have the fight in them? Are they going to win the battle of life? Are they going to play the game of life? That's the sixth house. Okay. And the sixth house is an Artha house or a wealth house. It's a house of wealth. The second, sixth, and 10th houses. The sixth house is a house. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get rich. That's the sixth house. Okay. It's a house of wealth. The harder you work, the more you make, the more you have. And and if you have K2 in the sixth, though, that skews it a little bit, but or the south node in the sixth. But usually that's true. In life, if you work hard at something, you are going to start to see results in it. If you put all of your energy into something, you usually become successful or semi-successful unless there's some major disaster or something. But that's the sixth. Yeah, right. Yeah, these are strong people. They can get through a lot, So, okay, so the sun's going to go over Neptune now. This is brief, it's a couple of days, but if you have a Sun-Neptune conjunction in your chart. All right, so what the Sun-Neptune does, the Sun, of course, is the king, the government, rulership, authority, and power. When it's with Neptune, that means there is a certain idealization around government being able to do things that it can't do. Basically, there's an illusion that there's a lot of faith in the government. I've also noticed that people who have Sun-Neptune conjunctions are susceptible to getting into cults or a cult of personality, just really idealizing authority. Now, if it doesn't show up that way, it's a very spiritual combination because the sun is the core essence of someone. It's your individuality. It's your individual inspiration that comes from within rather than without, which is Jupiter, which is a different thing. But the sun and Jupiter are very similar in how they show up in someone's life and what they manifest as. But the sun is us, our essence, and who we are at our core. Some people are healers at their core. Some people are accountants at their core. Some people are bodybuilders or strongmen, or whatever it is at your core essence is something that you are able to express usually later in life. Okay, that's why the sun period starts at age 50. The reason that is because we use our moon in the early stages of life to navigate the world, okay, to adapt to worldly situations. By the time we're older, we usually have a foundation we can operate from financially, so we can follow our core essence and do what we've always wanted to do, follow our inspiration. But anyway, so when you get Sun with Neptune, there is an idealization. There's a lot of longings and dreams about who you can be and how you can express your true essence and how you can exert your influence in the world. So when the sun, like in a couple days or tomorrow, I think it's going to be exact, there can be you can hear about within the world a way a government actually pulls through on something it promised. Right? Or a leader pulls through because it's Cazimi. That's why it's within 1 degree of the sun. So you're purifying, the transcendental aspiration. That's why I like to call Neptune. In the birth chart, it's a highly spiritualizing influence. The person is usually in the early life dissatisfied with who they are at their core, They're dissatisfied with their ability to exert their power and influence. And they're just, they really have a very idealization of who they want to become and how they want to express themselves. Now, the way you heal the outer planets or the trans-Saturnians is through going to the opposite house, just like you do with the South Node, okay, or K2. You go to the opposite house. So wherever that Sun-Neptune conjunction is, you go to the opposite, where they call the Earth, because the Earth's shadow, the opposite of the Sun is the Earth. And or the Earth's shadow, which is basically the Earth. So and that's, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole nother that's another video, another 2-hour long video on the Earth and its position in the constellations. So yeah, planets in the eighth, even when you have a lot of transiting planets to the eighth, there's so much going on. A lot of massive, major, unexpected events usually happen, and these events really shake you to your core. You have to really look within and see what your motivations are. It's usually a time when you're really interested in divination practices and trying to find the answers, because there's a lot of changes going on. The eighth house is a self house, or a house of not a self house, a house of total freedom. It's a spiritual house. It's one of the moksha houses, or the water houses, they call it in Western astrology. And so very deep house, the deepest house in of the 12 houses. So you're really looking for a lot of solving problems, or the mystery of life and solving mysteries. That's the eighth house. And usually things change in a major way with whatever that planet represents when they cross the eighth house. So yeah, I'll take some questions for a few minutes if you guys want to. So you mean Saturn transiting the eighth usually means a career change, or something changes in the career in that 2.5-year period. And usually it's a beneficial change when Saturn transits the eighth. Now, what affects Mercury? Oh, so you mean the 6th house from the moon? Yeah. You either change your career completely, or something within the career changes, like you get a promotion, or you get completely new responsibilities, something like that. No. Rhett, no. Usually when Rahu is Venus, it's not happening. Because Rahu, first of all, you have to have experiences with Rahu, worldly experiences. You can't just check out. And when you have a lot of planets with Rahu, asceticism really isn't, even if you have yogas for it, or planetary combinations for asceticism, it's really about having concrete experiences in phenomena. Well, okay, so Mercury conjunct Jupiter is really good for Mercury and really good for intellectuality, learning, having fun, basically. But it'll be this similar to having that in the 6th house from the ascendant. I take the 8th cusp. So when Saturn's transiting the 8th house, when usually that major change in career happens if the 8th cusp is there. If it's just like the whole sign house system and you've got Saturn in your 8th transiting your 8th house, but it's not hitting the 8th cusp, let's say the 9th and 8th the 8th and 9th cusp is in the sign that would normally be the 9th. That I think it brings some minor changes and it's more internal. It's going to internally change your attitude around work and your internally change how you let go of things, how you get rid of things in your life, how you understand what is most important in your life and focus on something. But it's the 8th cusp. Yeah. That's when usually the change in career happens. Oh, good. Yeah, that's great. It's okay. That can indicate a change for a Cancer rising in your career because Saturn rules the 8th. And usually it will have something, yeah, it can be very beneficial. It really depends on some other things in the chart, though, because Saturn isn't, Saturn rules the 8th house, so it would probably change something in the career, I think. No, good Lord, no. Jupiter and Mercury is a good combination for Mercury for sure. So you have Gemini rising. Not at all. Jupiter is a great benefic. Jupiter usually gives a lot of opportunities. Mercury in the 7th is good for business. If you ever started a business, you would do very well at it. That puts your ascendant lord in the 7th house of business. Well, yeah, that's kind of hard to answer because it it really depends on the 7th lord Venus as far as can Saturn in the 8th transiting that bring marriage partnership. That I can't really, I'd have to see the chart because of you've got your Dara Karaka, Venus, Jupiter for a woman, and the 7th lord. So, and some other things. Okay, so I think the eclipse, all right, so the eclipse affects usually like a month before and a month after you can feel the effects of an eclipse. And then you can feel the reverberations of an eclipse until the next eclipse, but it's much more minor than the month before and the month after. Well, life purpose is seen through a few things. The Navamsha Jupiter, the ninth cusp in the Navamsha, the ninth house in the Rashi chart, and to a certain extent, the D45. Okay, that's a ninth house Varga. The Atmakarka doesn't really show life purpose. It can show career and talents and what you involve yourself in quite a bit more. Yep, the eighth house is the house of astrologers. So, and psychics, anything that's considered to be non-traditional. But even if psychics and astrologers were traditional, they still be the eighth house. But the eighth house is taboo, like things that are taboo. The ninth house is the house of tradition and culture, and anything that is taboo in that tradition or culture is considered to be the eighth house. The eighth house is breaking the law, basically. Doing criminal actions, but it also rules, divination practices and like things like Reiki and even yoga was considered to be eighth house, but probably not now anymore because it's so mainstream. No, that's just one thing you look at. No, it's not bad. Nothing is you have to look at the ninth cusp, the ninth lord, and then D45, or the sun is actually the most important planet in the D45. Believe it or not, it's more important than Jupiter. Jupiter you can look at in the Rashi chart, and in the ninth cusp lord, look at the Navamsha and the D45. Now, the D45 is how much you act on your inspirations. That's what it shows. And how if you act on them and if you're going to be fulfilled by them. That's like, because the acting on the inspiration, the personal inspiration, is the most important thing in life. Basically, it's the Dharma houses 1, 5, and 9. So, when you follow your inspirations and do what is who you are, you'll succeed. That doesn't mean you're going to be rich or, it just means that's the key to happiness, basically. Okay, well, Venus in the ninth house, that gives, teaching. Venus is actually a planet of teaching, but teaching on a level of teaching things that people can use in their mundane daily lives, because Venus is the guru of the Asuras. And Venus in Jaimini astrology is prophecy. It's actually a planet of astrology. Venus is considered to be the teacher who gives you advice or teaches you things that help you, give you fulfillment in the world. Jupiter is the teacher that gives you a philosophical foundation, a religious or spiritual foundation. Venus in the ninth can also, you can be someone who's a diplomat, diplomacy, working with relationships with people, working luxuries, being fulfilled, making life beautiful. All of the Venetian things become a strong purpose. Poetry is Venus. Okay, so so Rahu just give you these, like Rahu in the Varga charts. Rahu and Ketu in the Vargas is going to show, I don't really pay attention to the nodes in the Vargas unless it's the D12, to be honest. So the D12 is the chart of ancestors and the chart of past lives. And Rahu and Ketu are the Karakas of that chart, because Ketu rules they both rule your ancestral lines. And Ketu rules your mother's ancestors and your father's ancestors. Rahu rules, if you're a man, Rahu rules your mother's father's ancestors, or your maternal father, paternal grandfather, or no, maternal grandfather. And Rahu rules for a man, rules your paternal grandmother. It's confusing, but but they both rule. The D12 is actually more important than the D9 in my experience. It actually totally mitigates the chart, the Rashi chart, because it's the chart of the ancestors, chart of the past lives, if you believe in that. And so it shows you what is coming to you from what your ancestors did and what you did in your past lives. So if you have really good planets in your D12, and you have shitty planets in your birth chart, it's going to mitigate that. Okay. So yeah, it'll show karmas coming to you out of the blue. You have no idea why they're there or anything. Yeah, a lot of people get married when Saturn transits the 7th house. I did. So, in Saturn, because Saturn is a long-term influence, Saturn's going to give you something long-term after you focus on what's important. In some cases, it can end a relationship, but it ends it because it's not part of who you are. It's not you. It's not going to support you. Like I said, it's shit. Saturn rules shit, garbage, things we don't think about, we don't want to know about. And then after it gets rid of what doesn't belong, it'll give you something that is long term. It gives you what's left over is what's most important. Yeah. So you have a Buddha, Aditya, Miriam. You have a Buddha, Aditya yoga in your 8th house. And that is, that means you have extreme skill in the 8th house. So Buddha, Aditya yoga is basically a Sun Mercury conjunction. And it gives extreme skill in something, and wherever it is, what house it's in. Saturn is still in your 7th, so you've got another year and a half maybe, until Saturn leaves Pisces. D12 2nd house, K2, Pisces, Rahu 8th house, Virgo with Jupiter. Yeah, so that means that your ancestors want you to develop Jupiter, Rhett. When you have Rahu with a planet in the D12 or the Dwadashamsha, that means that your ancestors, their hopes, their dreams are coming through the ancestral DNA or the blood memory for you to develop that Jupiter, which is astrology and, just basically all of the good things that Jupiter represents. It's a neutral placement because Venus is neutral to Libra. You would have to look at if Mars is being activated by a Rashi aspect or a sign aspect from Jupiter or Mercury, then it gets strong. These are called, Jupiter and Mercury are manifesting planets and the lord of a sign. So if Venus is Rashi aspecting or sign aspecting your Libra, that's the lord of Libra, so it's activating Mars. Then Jupiter or Mercury too. That's the Gemini 2nd strength. Your Jupiter, just Jupiter in general. If Rahu is with Jupiter in your D12, you are developing Jupiter. Your ancestors are like behind you, basically wanting you to develop that Jupiter. So develop wealth, creativity, spirituality, philosophy, all the good stuff. So yeah. Well, anyway, this has been fun, you guys. My voice is getting hoarse. So I'll go. If you want me to continue doing these, I like doing question and answer. It's a lot of fun. So you can let me know in the comments after I sign off here. So it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in. Bye, everybody. Yeah, thank you.